We now have two captains of industry, business, whatever you want to call them, from the United States. I'd like to, for this session, I'd like to invite onto the stage John Chambers, the chairman and CEO of Cisco, the world's largest manufacturer of computer networking equipment, and Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Google. Gentlemen, hello. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to sit here. So if you sit here, and Eric there. Hi, Eric.
Thank you.
Hi, good. So, two gentlemen really who don't need very much introduction, but John Chambers from Cisco and Eric Schmidt, we all know Google started in a garage, or you say garage, do you, in the United States? A garage in California,
All
14 years ago.
All startups are supposed to start
in garages, right? And then,
even if they didn't really.
all right, there you are. And then Google became Google, and your Cisco Corporation, engineering, manufacturing, and service corporation, and so on. So I'd like to share your insights about technology, where you think it's going, growth, how it can help fuel that, and also why you have both opted for the United Kingdom as the kind of, Central European base for you. But first of all, Eric Schmidt, very much struck by a line I remember reading a few years ago. I think it was in 1996 that Bill Gates was quoted as saying that we tend to overestimate the technological advancements we're going to make in the next 18 months and underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10 years. So fast forward 15, 16 years later, where do you think we are now in terms of, are there any new frontiers when it comes to technological innovation in entertainment and in that kind of field, or is the best really behind us?
I think it's pretty clear from a technological perspective that the big story is going to be the combination of mobility and networks. If you take a look at what Cisco did in terms of building out the internet, and you take a look at these sorts of devices, and the power of these is just beginning to be understood. This is not a mobile phone, it's a supercomputer. It's backed up by a billion or millions of cores of CPUs on very, very fast networks. It can answer questions, and you can be entertained and so forth in a way that nobody ever thought of. So universal language translation, infinite ability to learn how to read, replacing traditional models of entertainment and entertainment distribution by fiber optic networks and fast links to these kinds of devices. This and the tablets that we got from Samsung together will, I think, define the next 10 to 20 years.
Now you translate that, if you will, to what it means to business and governments. Changes that used to take place over a decade would take place in 2 years. The ability for companies to very quickly change the way they bring business. You do healthcare, which companies are successful, which ones get left behind. And as the Prime Minister stated earlier, the same thing will happen in countries. Instead of happening over multiple decades, it will happen perhaps in 5 to 10 years. Speed of change has never been more. It's catching the inflection points.
It's worth actually saying that this notion of time compression has been going on for hundreds of years. Right? If you sort of study the rate at which information markets have accelerated, this is just a continuation of radio, television, the telegraph, and all of that.
If I can get a bit personal now, I'll just ask you both, what would you personally look forward to in terms of devices that might transform your own lives? John, I mean, is there something, well, these devices that open the door for you or open the fridge and cook for you or whatever, I mean, are we going to get there?
Well, two things that I really am interested in. Almost 7 years ago, I asked my team to design from Star Trek, Beam Me Up Scotty, the capability to communicate anywhere in the world, a doctor to any patient, business to business, to your family, sharing sporting events, etc. So what I look forward to most is the capability, using Eric's terms, for any device to get access to any video content as though you're virtually there. That will change healthcare. That will change how you sell to customers. That will change productivity on a major basis. What our industry's got to do, and Eric, feel free to disagree, but our industry's got to make this easy to use. If you have to be a computer jockey to do it, it's a real problem. So making these capabilities very easy to use and interoperate are key.
I completely agree with that. And if you look at the sort of, what is the big problem that this audience has? It's time zones, travel, and airplanes. And with modern technology, you really can get to the point where you can sort of do your business and do your life virtually. And we're pretty much close to that. To me, the most interesting thing that will happen is the devices that you've not yet seen which integrate healthcare monitoring, medicine, and so forth into the world that I described. There's a whole generation of startups that are busy building essentially telemetry for your body that can either, in a non-invasive way, figure out how you're going. So you can imagine sort of how's my mom kind of a device where you give your mom a phone, you know, she's an older lady or what have you, and it's monitoring her, and again, with her permission and all of that, says, by the way, your mom's in trouble. She didn't get up today, or she had some problem, or she had a fall, or she's monitoring her blood pressure, or whatever, right? And given the aging of the world, this will be a huge market, probably a larger market than most of the markets we've defined today.
Very interesting connected device. I have to say, on a more trivial note, as a mother of 4 children, 3 of them teenagers, you know there's earpods that they wear and then you talk to them and they're not listening to you and they go, huh? And so I would like a remote control that can eject them from the ears and administer a mild electric shock at the same time, so I never have to hear again. That's what I would like. You going to rise to that?
We could, either one of us could figure out a way to do it. It's just that it wouldn't sell very many units because the children wouldn't use it.
I would use it. I'd buy loads. All right, so now, John Chambers, Cisco, very much linked now into the UK economy. You like it here, you think it's a great base for your European operations. So what is it that has brought you to the UK?
If you would have told me 5 years ago this would be our primary bet we're going to make in all of Europe, and more than half of our resources would be R&D here in the UK, I would have said not a chance. And what has changed is the willingness of this country to rethink how do you be the best place for business, and it's starting to become one of the models in the world. Probably only Canada would be perhaps an easier place to do business and even moving faster. What the Prime Minister outlined today, and you think about where you want to go, education and immigration. You want to think of infrastructure, like Lord Green said on broadband. You want to think about a country that understands market transitions and innovation and really creates the environment for that, supportive government and working together. A year and a half ago, I met with the Prime Minister, and he outlined a lot of the things that he brought to the table today and said, here's where we're going to go. But at that time, I also shared with him I had $40 billion trapped outside the U.S. because of our tax policy. And he said, let me encourage you to invest it here in the U.K. We did. We bet $5 billion 2 months later in the U.K. And we continued to build. Yes, a company that does, if you will, video satellite capability.
It's part of your video
with
strategy,
DirecTV and Sky. So an integral part of where we go. But now half of our resources in the UK are engineering, and you wouldn't have necessarily thought that way. We bought 3 startup companies and building off of it. Why my question about immigration earlier and startups. So that's why we're here.
You're known as the plumber of the internet, aren't you? At least your London boss calls you Cisco that, isn't it?
A little bit.
Very well-heeled plumber.
Well, first, it's a very honorable profession. It's very lucrative. But it's not the future. If we stay in plumbing, and that's how they view us, much like if Google just stays, quote, as a device concept, it's your ability to enable things that won't get done otherwise. Your ability to enable the Olympics, your ability to enable healthcare, your ability to enable how you take care of your elderly parents, and literally know if they've taken that medication that day. And so it's more of what we make possible.
The engineering.
It's the business transformation or the human transformation.
Okay. And Eric, you also at Google have got your new venture here in London, the Tech City, as it's known, in Shoreditch in East London, where you've got this first experiment that you've set up known as the campus, where you've got lots and lots of young, bright talent coming in. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we love Britain because we make more money here on a per query basis than everywhere else. So we're always delighted to be here. But we also love the weak dollar, which I should add. And so the combination of the two makes this a very lucrative place to do business. And under the Prime Minister's leadership, there have been a lot of changes to make things easier. And this is a government, this particular government, is very focused on unleashing the creativity of the young entrepreneurs that we know exist in the country. By the way, there are plenty of young entrepreneurs in other countries. It takes the government policy. You can't just sit there. You actually have to go and change the laws to allow for innovation, allow for failure, allow for limited investment, and all the kinds of things that you see in, for example, the American model. So this government has made that commitment. And as a result, working with the government, we've ended up with this Tech City, which is a physical location. What you learn with young entrepreneurs is that as sort of fun and exciting as they are, they actually need peer groups, they need mentors, they need examples. That's why Silicon Valley is where it is. John and I were talking about this earlier, that sort of everybody knows, because we're all together, we're always talking to each other, and the evolution of new ideas is very fast. We're trying to recreate that here in the city.
It's true. When you, sorry, yeah, go on.
So what's fascinating is how this all comes together, and this goes back to which countries are going to win and lose. Take what Eric just said about the tech city, and one thing that we're doing with the Olympics is keeping the concept of a British, if you will, innovation gateway. And all of a sudden connecting those tech cities all the way across the country. I think there are 12 currently in pilot systems. And Eric, what they're going to be able to do is not only communicate across the group, but as you have young startups, they could interview for venture capital. They could go to Badawi, they could go to Silicon Valley, they could go anywhere in the world. So you begin to think about the power of groups working together and really taking this technology and turning perhaps the industry on its head.
And it's early days yet, Eric, but are the young bucks bringing in the big bucks yet?
It takes a while. People forget that it takes 7 to 10 years to get these sort of companies established, get exits and so forth. So we're just at the beginning. I think it's too early to say. It's what's interesting is when you talk to them, they're working on the same problems and with the same enthusiasm as you see in the United States. So I think that bodes well.
And if they do succeed in their startup, you hope they're going to be using Google's infrastructure and all that.
I certainly hope so. If not, they'll be using somebody better.
And you mentioned the BIG, big initiative that Cisco launched last year, the British Innovation Gateway and so on. So tell us just a little bit more about that, because that is also linked to your Olympic strategy, isn't it, for Cisco, because you are the main telecoms provider for the Olympic Games.
Yes. If you think about it, let me answer the second part of the question first. If you would have asked us 5 years ago what we'd done on the Olympics, my eyes would have been all proud, and I would have said 5,000 wireless locations, 80,000 ports, 16,000 IP phones, the ability to bring cloud computing across the board with tremendous speed, video everywhere, 10 times the complexity.
I like that list.
Well, it's nice, 10 times the complexity of the Olympics just 4 years ago. You talk today, it's about how do you enable the goals of the Olympic Committee? How do you enable the goals of NBC? How does NBC move from number 4 in broadcasting to number 1? How do they monetize the revenue streams that they're after, make more online? How do they protect their content from privacy, etc.? The Olympic Committee wants to make this the best that's ever been done in the world, to inspire people around the world, but also to leave a lasting effect in the UK 5 years from now, and in East London in particular. So your ability to do what Eric said earlier, work on these innovation centers, and then change the rules, do it in a way that others have not done. Because if you just follow what others have done, you aren't going to get better results, because that 5 to 7 year window that he referred to. It's the ability to change those rules, change your math and science education, the ability to bring the Olympics excitement there, the ability to change how quickly you do startups and how you share the concepts of startups, and how when we leave the Olympics, we're still there 3 and 5 years later, both equipment and concepts and differentiation.
Eric, this thing of a legacy is very important, isn't it? I mean, you may come in encouraged by the Olympics and so on, and Tech City and so on, but expansion, there has to be the potential for that. I mean, when you look at Silicon Valley, big area, it could expand. And Tech City, people are saying, well, it's in Shoreditch and, crowded area. It could move to the Olympic Park, conceivably, couldn't it?
There's been a lot of discussion about that. Ultimately, this is about networks of people who work together and they're near each other. One of the things is, for a while, a lot of people in the internet community assumed that cities would sort of go away because you had equal access, both the rural and the urban, but that's not in fact true. Cities are the engine of innovation, they're the engine of knowledge for us globally. Taking your city and getting it highly connected, highly networked, getting all people working together, physical proximity matters. So any solution is going to have that. Shoreditch the reason Shoreditch was chosen is because it looks a lot like a place where young people want to hang out because it's full of them. Right? This is not that complicated a calculation. So if in your countries, if you decide to have a tech city, and what you do is you find some large square mile that's way out in the boonies, and you build a very gleaming office building, trust me, no one will go. Right? They want to go where there's an urban setting near a university, where there's creativity, where there's interesting and particularly a young audience.
So what is fascinating, if you watch, many people have tried to recreate Silicon Valley, almost all of them have failed. But what you begin to see occurring here in the UK and the other locations, fascinating enough, Israel's done it for a long time, but Moscow, Russia started to do it in Skokovo, and in China, Shanghai. But those centers determine your future and your ability to do innovation, not just in technology, but startups in general, and how fast you can do it. But it's what Eric said, it's great universities, it's a young workforce, it's creating that enthusiasm. Supportive government plays a much more important role than I ever thought.
It's worth saying that we're facing many, many globalization issues, and what I want from political leaders, some of whom are in the room, is I want a strategy to win, okay? Pretty straightforward. A strategy to win ultimately involves an investment in education, in entrepreneurship, in ways in which capital can be formed and so forth, open labor markets, et cetera, and a commitment to do so for decades. And if you do that, I think you can actually survive and do pretty well.
I was very struck by Thomas Friedman, the New York Pulitzer Prize winning author, and his most recent book. I mean, obviously he wrote that very famous book, The World is Flat, but you know, this new idea he has now about businesses is that businesses are increasingly multinational, global, and so on, and so they have lost their links somewhat with the community. And that one way of ensuring that it's a win-win situation, both for the communities and the businesses, for the businesses to be more entrenched in their communities. In a sense, that is what you are both doing, Google and in Cisco. Certainly here you see it in the UK. You are becoming engaged with the community here and also, obviously, in your other big market areas.
You want to go first?
I agree with that to some degree. Global companies, many of the heads of the businesses are represented here, are going to adjust based on global priorities. They're going to go where the growth is. And so they serve as a competitive market and a check and balance against arrogant governments. So literally, we will move if the government is doing the wrong thing, we'll move to a place where the government's doing the right things. And you'll see that globally. So I think to some degree, we serve as a check and balance, and obviously we serve as a great exporter of global values. So for example, treatment of women, right? The importance of innovation, the importance of education, the knowledge factories. I think often global companies are seen in a negative context, and they need to be seen in a context of the best of the world in terms of the way people are treated and people behave.
So if you take that concept, and I'm going to build on it, and then there's a second thing you said there, how hyperconnectivity will change as well. Yeah. If you watch, once you're in an area, we found the more you invest in that area in terms of corporate social responsibility and making it a win-win with your unique capabilities of technology, candidly, the better your business is. So we've won the top awards in the U.S. for the top company in terms of from both the Bush administration and the Obama administration on corporate social responsibility. Both bases. In technology, we don't care. A Democrat and a Republican, and we love each other most of the time.
Some of the time.
But if you watch, wherever we do that, whether it's in Israel, where we help the Arab population in Palestine move from less than 0.5% of their population being involved, their GDP being in technology, to 5% in 3 years. Or how you do that across Israel in terms of getting the Jewish population, the Arab population to interact in a more effective way. The more you do in terms of my view of corporate social responsibility, and I've always believed those are most successful, owe an obligation to give back, the more successful you are in an area. But I also would not miss what Eric just said. In today's world, the changes are so fast. If you don't keep up as a government or a nation, you get left behind with tremendous speed. That's that hyperconnectivity that Thomas Friedman referred to in the book. Jobs will move with tremendous speed, cash will move with tremendous speed, and countries and businesses who don't get it, regardless of how powerful they are today, will get left behind.
So when you look at your activities globally, where do you see, I mean, you talked about the UK as being a good hub for Europe and so on, and a very important market for Google as well. Where do you see the regions, I mean, where the most cutting-edge innovations are coming from?
The most interesting thing is that everybody assumes that there's a lot of difference in the world. I will tell you that people around the world are pretty much the same. Shocking. They search for the same things. They like the same kind of entertainment, adjusting for sort of culture and language. And they behave pretty much the same. It's amazing. People like to be consumers. They like to buy things, right? They like to be entertained. And so what I see is actually the blending of many of these things. And most of the companies that I know, certainly your company, we do global development. So we don't do a per UK product and a per Israel product. Each of these development centers does something that's global, and it works. And that's, again, another part of this global competition around knowledge and innovation that we're all now part of.
What has changed, though, is emerging countries aren't just the fastest growing market with the best GDP. They're skipping generations in their retail strategy, their manufacturing strategy, their healthcare strategy. So we actually get most of the creative ideas out of an India, China, Russia, South Africa, where you begin to see them skip a generation or two. That is both a good thing if you can bring them back to the developed world, or a bad thing if the developed world doesn't move much faster to keep that leadership.
Just one final question. Yeah, carry on.
You can think of this as a sort of a competition between stable, mature economies and emerging economies. The characteristic of the stable, as a gross statement, the characteristic of the stable, emerging, mature economy is there's relatively low people growth or negative demographic growth, and yet it's very sophisticated. There's a lot of money. These are mature markets. They're building very, very strong products. The unit growth and ultimately, in my view, the economic growth is going to be in the emerging markets just because of their scale. They have favorable demographics because of global competition and other things. They're now growing and they have a lot more investment, and they are going to get there. Right? One of the great stories of the last 20 years has been 2 billion people have gone from abject poverty to what we would think of as lower middle class in their countries. This is a great achievement for all of us. Those people are going to continue to grow. Those markets are enormous for all of us.
Yeah, I know. Google Africa, I mean, they're talking about some figures you hear, 30 million, up to 300 million of the African middle class, and I know Google Africa's got big plans there.
The internet numbers are quite interesting because there's on the order of 2.3 billion people on the internet that, wired in various ways. There's about 5 billion mobile phones, of which more than 1 billion are now smartphones. So we have to, in the next 5 years, connect another 4 billion or so, either through smartphones or wired things. When those people come online, that is a very, very large market.
And think about how these countries will change it. They aren't going to follow our lead. China will basically use these new concepts of cloud and deliver virtual classrooms to their students, share their teachers, not in distance learning, but be able to have a different teacher each time into every classroom in China on a different topic. And they will use the technology that Eric's company and other companies make to really have social networking back and forth where they train each other in education. Completely turn education on its head, a virtual backpack, if you will. India will bring a doctor to every citizen in India, if they do their job right, for probably $1 per visit through video capability and other technologies. Those models will be ones that actually we'll learn from and bring back perhaps to other countries, but their speed of change is dramatic.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for the moment. And very short a time, but I take just one point there from Martin Sorrell, head of WPP. Just put the microphone close to your mouth. Thank you, Martin.
John and Eric, this is in danger of turning into a love fest. So just, it says there, business is Great Britain. What are the things we're doing wrong? What are the things that we could do that would make Britain even more attractive to Cisco and Google?
For me, I go wherever the startups are. And we have acquired 150 companies around the world. We grow and move into market adjacencies, Eric, like we were talking out in the hall, because of startups. To keep us here and grow, it's the importance of having startups, not just in our industries, but multiple industries. So blowing away those roadblocks, even though selfishly it won't help me in the short term, it is really important to the long term. So creating those small entrepreneurs, really capturing the imagination of the young people, an immigration policy that brings the best young people from around the world would be the second thing I'd add to that.
I liked it when you turned to me when you talked about young people. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Eric Schmidt.
Kissing up the moderator is a good idea.
I worry about the blowback from incumbencies when you have this kind of change. Britain has a very large civil service which is served honorably, which is getting sort of negatively impacted by the budget changes. I worry about the politics backsliding. I'll tell you that I don't know of a strategy to win that does not involve more investment in education and more liberalizing of labor market rules and investment rules. What happens is the incumbents fight very hard in small and subtle ways to prevent that. So I would suggest for all the governments is do a benchmarking, not at the macro level because everyone's verbal claims are the same, but go into the details. If you are a 25-year-old entrepreneur, what are your barriers? If you're a 30-year-old who's got a 49-person company, what is your barrier to get to 50? There turn out to be all sorts of funny little rules that were written maybe for good reasons and maybe not 10 or 20 years ago that need to get revised. And I suspect that there's still some here.
Gentlemen, thank you. And just a final point to you. You talk to CEOs and chairmen all over the world and so on. When it comes to Britain, do most of them think business is Great Britain?
I'd say it's emerging. But one of the great things about the world today is it's a 200-country free-for-all, right? And that what you want to do is you actually want to study these models. If you have a very large country with lots and lots of different communities, Brazil, America, that sort of thing, then you have a different strategy than if you're small. Britain is in between, right? It's both a global hub, but also a distinct culture. You have to figure out the right strategy for that.
If you look at it and you talk to people around the world, and this is why I used Canada as an example earlier, they've got there. It's a great place to do business, great immigration policy, great startup mentality. Their providences and their leadership across the nation, regardless of party, are united. They've done this consistently. I think the challenge for us here in Britain is to get a consistency. 5 years ago, I would have said unlikely. Today, it really feels good. We clearly bet prior to an inflection point, so we're betting that the answer will be yes, but it's results oriented, and it's consistency of the program.
Thank you very much indeed, John Chambers, CEO and Chairman of Cisco, and Eric Schmidt, Executive Chairman of Google. Thank you both very much. Thank you.